audible? Good. So, we have been hearing about, the cyber physical system, and, cyber security is something that, is very much in news these days, right? Like because of the hacks and all, right? So, so I would like to talk about the cyber security when we are moving to Industry 4.0 with all the cyber, with all the devices connected to the cyber world, right? So I will start with this, right? So basically what we are saying is that, the manufacturing industry is very focused on, in fact other industries also, but more so manufacturing industry, they are very focused on their core business and not thinking much about the security aspects, because, you are busy with, focusing on the core business, but not thinking too much about security, right? So in today's world, people are very focused. The attackers are very focused. They are. It's not a generic attack that is happening, right? So the world has changed, right? So you need to think about it. So what has changed, right? See, when we were growing up, right, 20, 30 years back, right? So we could drink water from the tap or the hose, right? But today we won't do it, or we won't allow our kids to do that, right? So what the bottle provides it is basically the security, right? And more we understand is, like, from the manufacturing industry, there is good awareness about safety. But, there are standards, there are regulations around safety. So safety is very well understood, not so much security. But with 4.0, when you start connecting your, your operations and your, operations technology to the cyber world, right? That's where you need to think about security more, because, like, you are now connected with the corporate network, and then if somebody is able to penetrate, it can move laterally and it can go to your PLC, DCS and whatnot. And the attacks like Stuxnet, right, where they can show you something else and the boiler may, explode if you don't control it in the time. So just a quick view of how things, have been shaping up, right? From the attacks perspective, it has been growing in size and, numbers perspective. Over the years, the attack vectors have been changing, and, more and more it is becoming like unmanageable. It is like, it is just keeps happening because it's a very focused and, funded efforts. So some of the studies show that, on an average, it takes around 201 days, so almost 6 to 7 months before you realize that there is a data breach. This is the average time. In some cases, it is even more. We have seen globally, like, where somebody from outside calls and then they come to know that there is already an exposure that they had. And manufacturing industry, you would not like your IP to go out, right? Because once it is lost, it is lost. Earlier we had an example of Coke. So if that formula is lost, it's gone, right? So similar for any other industry. And, Ponemon along with IBM does a cost of breach analysis. So it shows that there is around $7 million spent on a breach, basically, to recover from that, maybe because part of it goes to regulatory, because of the regulatory compliances, because of what the protection they have to give to the end user and so on, right? So it could be very costly. That's the message, right? From an IP perspective, from the money perspective. So quick view on, from a manufacturing perspective, right? So you can see, this is a map which shows around, across different industries, the number of events that we see, as IBM services globally, we manage the different industry sectors. So you can see there are, around 54 million events, 1,000 attacks, and 93 incidents. Whereas, like, if we see the manufacturing sector, the events are on the higher side, attacks are less, but then the incidents, which are actually the incidents known, they are on the higher side. And we know that, there's lack of regulatory norms, right? So basically the attacks the incidents may be much more. It doesn't come out in public. It's not known. So that's a quick message there. Now, from a source of attack perspective, again, from a manufacturing industry perspective, we can see that the outsiders contribute to around 91%, right? Insiders are only 9%, which is very different from the other industries. Other industries, we see that the outsiders are around 45% and insiders contribute to around 55%, right? So there could be various reasons, like see, and I would like to hear from you also. But what we think is, like, see, from a manufacturing perspective, you have a lot of outdated technologies that are still sitting. They are not so much standards based, and they are not patched. A lot of hygiene issues, and a lot of all those things can lead to an attack from an outside perspective. And insider attack being less, the reason could be more loyal employees. People don't move like in the other industry. Just a quick view there. So from an attack scenario perspective, in the manufacturing space, right? So what is the first thing, right? You would like to protect your crown jewel, right? Like, say, as I gave an example of Coke. Every one of you, from that manufacturing perspective, you will have certain assets that are, your IPs, right? It could be formula, it could be your engineering drawings, it could be XYZ, right? You need to protect that, because that's your business. If it goes out, you're gone, right? You may be, you may be producing it, but the other guy will produce it before you. So first, know your crown jewels and protect them. That's number one, right? Then your operational information. So we have been hearing a lot of things about, which matters a lot in manufacturing industry is, about optimizing and reducing the production time, production efficiencies and all, right? So each company does it in a different way. Yeah, they might be implementing Six Sigma or, whatever ways, right? You don't want to lose that information. That's very critical for you, right? And third, which is across industry, ransomware, malware attacks. As I said, manufacturing industry is more prone because it's like using dated technologies. Now, from from our monitoring perspective, the type of attack that we see is like, maximum, like almost 75 is contributed by, the injection type of attacks. Now, we know the sensors or even the PLCs, DCS and all, they don't have the controls inbuilt where like it is checking what you are inputting into the system, right? Whereas like you look at the IT systems, there is something called, you have to do input validation. It will allow you to take only certain type of things so that people can't play and people can't hack the system. But that's not the case in the manufacturing industry. So you can see that, higher than average industry average, which is around 42%. So now, we have seen, many companies, many organizations like which are, having, this is a quick view, like see, which had like around, this is one of the case studies, they had around 85 different point solutions, security point solutions from 45 vendors. It would have been a nightmare, right, to manage that, patch that and all of that, right, vendor plus the products. Then the second aspect is on the right side is around the security skill set. By 2020, it is projected that there will be around 1.5 million shortage from security consultants perspective, consultant and the security positions. And the last one is very interesting, right? So we see that around 70% of CEOs are not ready to share the attack data, and it's global. India, it is like way much beyond that. Nobody wants to share the data. So the one thing we have to understand, right? These guys, the bad guys that we talk about, they are very collaborative. They work as a team. They do collaboration on darknet and all the places. And we don't discuss about the issues, the next door neighbor gets it the next day, right? So yeah, leave the WannaCry type of thing which will come into picture, but there are many attacks that happens, and we are not open, we don't share it, right? So that should not happen. The situation has to change, right? So we all know now security, after a lot of attacks recently in India, is a boardroom discussion, right? And the security portfolio, the managers who are managing it, they get to ask a lot of questions, right? How are we securing our data, right? Do we have access to right skills? Are we operating at an appropriate, industry average, and so on, right? So these are so many things that they are asked. Do they have the answers? My perception is, they are getting there because of the awareness, but it's a long way to go. Now, so that was more from an industry perspective, where it stands, and now is our point of view, right? Like what you could do and how IBM could help, right, with the solutions and all. So it's basically like, imagine if you can protect against tomorrow's risks today, right? So we are investing a lot of time, energy, and research. We are doing a lot of research, and we are actually building systems which can talk to each other. And when you have more visibility because of the integration, that's where you can detect and you can catch the attacks early in the stage, right? So now you have realized that yes, security is important. Now what? So you start looking at this, right? Like, so it is all chaos, right? Vulnerability management, application security, identity management. Yeah, I don't manage my identities. What do I do, right? Malware protection, incident threat management, and XYZ, right? How do we handle it, right? So it's a big confusion. Where should I start, right? So this is where, what IBM has done is, like, we have created a immune system, security immune system. So at the center of it, you can see there is a security analytics, right? So I'll come closer. So basically, you saw that map of multiple things. So this is a thought process that you should have, which is more organized on different security domains, with security analytics being at the center, right? And it is collecting data from your endpoints, threat intelligence, which is like external feeds, network, advanced fraud, identity and access management, cloud, data and apps, and mobile, right? And so this is basically like how you can, start looking at it and, think about how to approach and, how to address different things. Now, this is a quick view of IBM products which, from each of these domains. Like, so at the center you see QRadar, which is basically, QRadar is basically a tool which can, it's a SIM tool, you might have heard it, right? It's a SIM tool, but it is no longer called SIM tool. It is an intelligence tool which actually gathers data from across the organization, and it can collect IT data as well as OT data. And you can have a view in your central control room, right? So that, we call it SOC, Security Operations Center. And, there are various other products all around this space. And overarching, the security transformation services, which is basically, consulting, SI, and, the support business. So now looking at the customer purchase patterns, right, that we have seen. So one is like attack based, right, which is very reactive. I saw this type of attack, let's go and buy this tool, right? Let's address this. If it's an outsider attack or an insider attack, let's go and buy this tool. That's one approach, which is like very ad hoc. The second is IPL style, right? We all have seen IPL auctions. They know, yeah, I have to have an opener, I need a solid wicket keeper, and, XYZ, right? On a similar fashion, on the cybersecurity front, these are different domains that you can carve out, like the one that I showed. It's around that only. And, you can say that, yes, I need to, I have a decent network security, but I don't do much on the data security, with data and application security, which is very important, right? So you can, buy, products in that area, or you can have solutions in that area. And a more matured way of buying it is more business-driven, compliance, and threat-driven approach, right? So you should first understand what is your core business, rather than just saying, yeah, let's go and buy the most sophisticated tool in this area. That won't help you, because tools are just enablers. Till you tune it as per your business requirement, it is not going to give you results, right? So that's an important, and that's a very matured way of thinking. I see most of the companies still in the second category, and the second category is good. Manufacturing industry has also started. We have recently done few strategic assignments where we have helped customers to think on those lines. Now, from key elements of security strategy perspective, this is again around business, then technology, and then the operations aspect. I won't go into too much detail because I've already talked about it. Sorry. Yeah. So there are two ways to start right now, to just give a quick view, right? So there are two ways to start. One is like, you can have something like an intelligence tool, and you put in place and you say, okay, let me collect the data and let me learn from it, at least, because first thing is the visibility. If you know what is going on, then only you can fix it, right? So that's where the intelligence tool comes into picture, and it can, as you can see on the left side, it can integrate to various devices, VAPT outputs, and multiple things, and it can actually give you a very focused intel on what to target, right? So this is one approach you can take. The second approach is a more strategic approach, which is like, this is something called, so IBM's framework, which is called 10EP, 10 Essential Practices of Security. So this is more like, first understand from these 10 different domains perspective, do a gap analysis and understand where you stand from each of these perspectives, right? And it is a business friendly. So based on your business, where you should be, where you are, and where you should be, right? So that's basically the crux of this, and the outcome will be a strategy and a roadmap document, which you can take and start focusing on your long term as you move on your digital strategy. So basically, from a next era perspective, this is something that we had, in the initial days, right? We create the perimeter security, right? The fort around it, right? That doesn't work anymore. Doesn't work. Now, the next stage is, more about intelligence, integration and orchestration. That's where I was talking about the solution like intelligence solution, which can integrate and then orchestrate and tell you what and give you more focused information. And the next era is, it is moving towards the cognitive, cloud, and collaboration, as I was talking about collaboration between various industries. So that's it from my side. Am I on time or okay?